conference will now be recorded.
From the Research Triangle Park in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, we present MoneyMasters. Hi, I'm your host, Nick Palavita, and along with our co-host, Kim Calhoun.
Hi, everyone.
Today we have a very special guest, the founder of Stearns Financial Group that manages over $1 billion in assets in Greensboro, North Carolina. Dennis, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Kimberly.
Hi, Dennis. Hi, welcome. Wow, that's a big number. Nick, I think the Federal Reserve can't even account for that number.
Oh, well, I'm sure they spend some time together. But Dennis, tell our viewing audience where you're from and what do you do?
So I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana. I've been here in North Carolina now for going on 30 years. And I run a wealth management firm. We have offices in Chapel Hill and Greensboro and clients all over the country.
All over the country, really? Okay, now the thing is, the Financial Planning Association says that you're one of the leading futurists in the United States. And tell us what sort of financial projects you're working on right now.
Well, so I've had some interesting ones this year. One was a super large multi-gazillion dollar entity that wanted to run scenarios on what the next recession would look like.
Yeah.
And brought in a number of experts on that. And it's a very difficult question. So the prediction side was not as important. I mean, it was important, but it was not as critical as thinking about how we would pivot in different scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we had all the worries about inverted yield curve, and does that mean a recession's right around the corner? And the fact of the matter is that we think that recessions of the past, what we're going to see in the future, may look very different. So that was a very interesting exercise, and one that created a lot of actionable content, both on our investment side and on our financial planning and business planning side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
the other interesting one was around China and
mm-hmm.
all the issues going on there. You know, that's dull and boring these days. Everybody's hearing about China all the time.
Right. You've also written several books. Can you tell us, or can you show us some of the books that you've written?
Yeah, my first book was CEO Road Rules: Right Focused, Right People, Right Execution, and that was encouraged by a number of our business owner clients to talk about the unique issues that closely held businesses and entrepreneurs have. And then we wrote one on the issues for women around a breadwinner woman who is dealing with her young children and her parents and juggling all those balls, spinning plates all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then my most recent one was fourth quarter fumbles, trying to help people think about going into the fourth quarter of their life and how they could prepare better and not only avoid fumbles, but actually make it a super spectacular quarter.
Can you purchase these books like CEO Road Rules on Amazon.com, or are there places that people can buy it?
You can, Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Right. Now,
I would like to ask a question, though, about the book about women. What is the title of that book?
Yeah, so the title of that book is Breadwinner Women. And so co-authored Sharon Allen and myself. And it was actually a smaller e-book that is actually, as we speak, being expanded into a larger presence because of all the feedback that we've gotten that this is a really difficult issue for a lot of women. And so we're trying to give them more tools to be able to work with.
Mm-hmm. Right. And fourth quarter fumble, is that also available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble?
It is. And then my new book that we're writing right now is Fourth Quarter Fumbles for the Business Owner.
Okay. Well, yeah, there's a lot of fumbles for business owners, and the CEO Road Rules. Would that be some people in India and Pakistan, some of our viewers around the world? Would that be something that they would be interested in looking at, or are people in Africa? What would you say?
I would think so, and it's interesting that the very first translation overseas was done in Vietnam,
Right.
And so the Vietnamese have a saying for the right focus piece that actually ended up becoming a sort of a battle cry for many of their entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
And that focus piece for them, they're now seeing a lot of business pivot their supply chains out of China into Vietnam. And I mean, they've been having an exploding entrepreneurial culture, and it's now exploding at an even higher level. But across Africa, tremendous work going on, a lot of explosion of entrepreneurial interest. So I think these are going to be some of the hot areas the next 20 years.
Right, and you have a roadmap for CEOs. When you started your own company and became an entrepreneur, did you have a book to go after, like a CEO roadmap book for yourself?
Well, so it's interesting because working with a lot of business owners early in my career, my book was just practical experience, listening to all the mistakes they made, listening to all the things they did right, and then just figuring out what was the right path for me going forward. And like many in our industry, I started off with a Fortune 500 company and then pivoted my group out roughly 30 years ago into an independent firm. And
Mhm.
so from that viewpoint, I was an intrapreneur before I was an entrepreneur.
Right, right. Okay, but the thing is, so what you're doing on the road book is that you're showing these are all the mistakes that you could make, and let's not make them again. Giving a roadmap for the entrepreneurs, which they definitely need, because there isn't much out there. When an entrepreneur steps out, then all of a sudden they go, what am I supposed to do? You know?
Yeah, and the interesting thing that's changed a lot in the last 5 years is the age of disruption and dislocation.
Mhm.
And we are now in such a pivotal, fast moving point. McKinsey says that we're moving at 10 times the speed and 300 times the power of the Industrial Revolution,
Mhm.
and that they think it's multiplicative, 3,000 times the impact. And our folks around here who work in this stuff all the time don't even know what that means, 3,000
Right,
times the
right,
impact. All we know is that it's huge.
right.
And so in that area, for CEO road rules, the right focus, right people, right execution, that right focus piece has now become not only what's your focus, but what's your ability to pivot
Mhm.
in the future. And can you anticipate some of these things coming? The old metaphor was the moat around the castle.
Mhm.
And would your business have a great moat, or was it a leaky moat? And all I know is in today's environment, with all the disruption and dislocation going on, you do not want to have a leaky moat. You want to put as many crocodiles and water in the moat as you can. And when the barbarians have helicopters, I mean, when things are moving at such a fast rate, you better have a completely different focus. And that means that business owners need to have a number of younger people that are sharp, millennials for the most part, hired into their company and integrated into their company. And the closely held business market has been kind of slow to adopt
Mhm.
that. So,
Right.
there's a variety of things they can do to try to push more of that innovation in.
Right. And you're also on the board of a nano technology group, or nanotechnology center. Can you let us know what is nanotechnology?
Yeah, well, so have you ever been to Disney World and ridden on the Small World ride?
Of course. Yes.
Yes,
Right.
it's a small world after all. And that
Right.
song gets you in your head and it just won't get out.
Hmm.
And so nano is everything small, literally down to the atomic level. And so at our nanotechnology center, we have a helium ion microscope, one of only a handful in the country that can see down to an atom
Hmm.
and look at things on a molecular basis. And so what's going on now is that in materials research, nano is redefining what materials will look like in the future. If you could imagine a bridge that could last for 150 years
Hmm.
and have sensors embedded in the bridge that would tell you if anything was creating a problem, stress fractures or otherwise. And that's a pretty mundane use of nano. There's so much going on in the convergence of nano biotechnology and information technology. The convergence of those three are going to change healthcare forever in the next 10 to 20 years. So we are in an exciting time that, people come to me sometimes and say, oh, our children, the world is not going to be a better place for them. Well, there's going to be some challenges for sure, but our children are going to have some things available that we can't even imagine right now.
Now, is this nanotechnology center, is this located in Greensboro, or is it in the Research Triangle Park? Where's this nanotechnology center at?
Yeah, our nanotechnology center, it's actually the joint school for nanoengineering and nanoscience, and it's a joint venture of UNCG, University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and North Carolina A&T University. And A&T is more on the engineering side. And so that joint venture is turning out a number of masters and PhDs in nanotechnology, but we're also doing some cutting edge research there. Our own technology accelerator that I'm a partner of is doing some amazing work in environmental remediation. And one of our very smart scientists, she took a fuel cell technology from another university that had frankly just been sitting on the shelf for a couple of years. They hadn't figured out what to do with it, pivoted it around and figured out how to make it into an environmental remediation technology. And the fascinating thing is that there are thousands and thousands of those kinds of things just waiting for some smart person to figure out another use to adapt it to.
Okay. Kim's our resident engineer. Kim, have you got involved in any of this nanotechnology? Oh, Kim, we can't hear you. You need to turn your speakers on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Okay.
Yes, apologize
Nanotechnology.
for the change of view, but I had
Right.
technology problems, and you know
Right.
how I always have
Okay.
a backup in case
I'll
something crashes.
I'll let you have the floor on nanotechnology. That's an engineering.
Nanotechnology is it's everywhere. I've not heard about it in this manner, so to speak, but it's all about taking something that processes at a much larger scale down to a nano level of, just fine tuning it all the way down to a very teeny tiny processor. It's so small and will be so small that the eyes won't be able to see it completely. So that, in technology, that's just the way things are going. Everything we develop today is old news. It keeps getting smaller in scalable size, but processes in much larger size. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about, Dennis. But technology is changing to this nano world. It has been probably for 10 years. A lot of what my invention is works with that. Did I lose you guys?
I can still hear you, Kimberly.
Okay.
No, you're good.
So, I mean, that's pretty much what I have to say about nanotechnology and the on the engineering side of the world. It's just about making something that processes bigger and faster, but scaling it down smaller than what we use today. And we're getting better at that. It's very expensive. A lot of people think, oh, outsource it to India and it's inexpensive. I like my stuff to be extremely good quality and work, and so I don't outsource to other countries until I know it works. And engineering fees are very expensive. Just to shrink down what I have working right now is a $650,000 engineering fee. A lot of people in business don't take a look at that, as well as they don't take a look at when you have a business and you're operating. People go, why is it costing you so much? It's because I make sure we license everything, we pass all the standards and all the policies that our industry or the FCC or the government requires. So, but nanotechnology is it's already here, pretty much.
It is, and every technology cycle goes through 4 different stages, from frenzy stage where everybody gets too excited about it, think late 90s and .coms. Then they go into consolidation stage, which is a nice word for a bust. And that also happened to the .coms. And then you get to the deployment stage. And the deployment stage is where whatever that early technology was actually starts getting traction. And I think you're right. I think we are on the cusp. There was a lot of early hype about nano. It's taken a while to kind of get its traction. Things are moving along in the research front all over the world. And so at some point in the near future, that deployment stage is going to be huge.
Well, you bring up something in stages, Dennis, and a lot of people don't understand this in building a business, which you've written some books on, and I'm going to definitely jump on and read. And I write about these kind of things in my book. But in engineering, we have processes and stages as well. There's proof of concept, white papers, just research. Then there's prototype, right? And then we go from prototype to what we call pre-launch or beta testing. You can have alpha testing and then beta testing. And then after you do that, you do a full commercial launch, or, whoever you're deploying to launch, whoever your engineers are. So in business and in engineering, we have stages, just like what you're talking about. So, right. Yeah, and I think nano is we're on the cusp. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, nanotechnology is very interesting, but also Stearns Financial Group. Let's talk a little bit about that. You manage over $1 billion in assets. You're registered investment advisor. That's not nano. No, that's not nano. That's big O. Okay, so tell me, what does Stearns Financial Group do in terms of managing these assets? What do you do?
Sure. Well, so our roots are in financial planning, and that is one of the areas that we've been recognized for, is a lot of our scenario work that we do in the planning part itself. And then as part of the planning, trying to help folks with their investment management, figure out what's the right risk level for the given level of growth they're trying to achieve that ties into the financial planning. And that's pretty important, that the two of those go hand in hand, so that people don't get over their skis. They don't get too aggressive, because that's a good way to get whipsawed by the market, is that you have the inevitable downturns, you get scared out of the market, you don't get back in, and all of a sudden, you're having way worse results than the average investor. The latest Dow Bar study was that the average investor over this bull market of the last 10 years has made like 2.5% a year, compared to returns in the market that are north of 10%. And a lot of that is behavioral finance issues of the old standbys of fear and greed, that the headlines, the 24/7 media cycle goes crazy, and people jump out of the market at exactly the wrong time, and then things are going up and they get greedy and they jump in, and so they're buying high and selling low, which by the way is not a good prescription for a
so you're saying they're betting that it's going to drop, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That they were betting that it's going to drop, or we're buying high, selling low just to get out. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, well, so in some of the cases, the last 10 years have been absolutely a laboratory of how investors and people in general can be influenced by the media, and thinking that things were the same as they've been in the past. Well, we are in a very unique time in history, and it's not just this age of disruption and dislocation. The Federal Reserve took unique steps over 10 years ago to try to save our bacon and get us out of what could have been a much longer recession, or even worse. And the overhang of that going forward has created all kinds of dislocations in financial markets. And bonds haven't returned very much. Stocks have been doing better than average, but stocks have also had some radical volatility. Early part of 2016, lot of people forget now that the first quarter of 2016 was the worst start to a year for the S&P 500 index in history. That freaked a lot of people out. And they got out of the market only to see it recover and go to new highs. And the other thing that people forget all the time is they hear new high, new high, new high, and they think overvalued. Well, how many new highs have we had in the last 30 years? We've had thousands of new highs. And so, again, that's part of the reason that our firm is actually doing a lot with junior achievement, working with middle schoolers on financial literacy. We're trying to help kids at a younger age understand some of these concepts, even if their parents may not always be making the right decisions.
We've actually rebranded financial literacy and now call it financial fitness. So
very good. Yeah,
we run,
I love it.
Well, we're working with the Super Bowl.
Well,
know,
the NFL. We'll be talking to you about that later, but basically it's financial fitness. So we run a financial fitness channel right now on IBM TV. But I think that's extremely important.
A person in their fourth quarter of their life, and we're in this really awkward, what you're calling downturn, or things aren't going where we planned. What would be some recommendations that you would give to people who are wanting to secure their financial fitness, say in the next 3 to 4 years?
Well, so it's particularly tricky for people who are approaching or in the fourth quarter of life. And by the way, when we were doing research for the fourth quarter fumbles book, the definition of fourth quarter is different for everybody. One of our clients said that her fourth quarter didn't start till she was 74. Another one of our book reviewers said, holy cow, I'm 62 and my fourth quarter started at 60 because all the men in my family die by the time they're 80. And so, the question of even when your fourth quarter starts is out there. And so with safe investments, CDs and bonds and things like that, having such low returns today, it is so much different. I mean, the playbook is completely different than it was, 20 years ago and even before the Great Recession. And so part of what we say is one size fits one, that each person has a unique set of facts about how much income they're getting, Social Security, for those lucky enough to have pensions. One of our female clients said that the new thing on the dating sites, one of the top 3 questions is, do you have a pension? Which I'm not sure is healthy.
You're way too full, because nobody gives those anymore.
I think I actually think that's an important question. But Stearns Financial Group, you're well known in the financial planning circles as one of the top financial advisors in the whole country, if not the whole world. And you've won some awards. Can you tell us about some of the awards that you've won?
Yeah, let's talk. I mean, because we're speaking with you, we want people to know that you're just not anybody that we're interviewing. You have a world of experience, but you've also won some awards on this experience. In other words, your credibility is very much there. And maybe we can do a little session for the people on our network in financial fitness with you, because you definitely know what's going on. But yeah, let's talk about your awards.
Yeah.
Sure. So I think, we've been very fortunate that we've been doing a lot of forward-looking work on our intelligent aging initiative, which includes the whole fourth quarter fumbles, and gray divorce, which one of the fastest growing trends in the country, because women are now recognizing that maybe they've got longer in the future with the spouse that may or may not be a marriage they enjoy. And so that intelligent aging initiative, we've been doing work all over the country and with thought leaders all over the world, actually. And then the super trend area, we were recognized by RIA Citywire recently as one of the Future 50. And the Future 50 is not about growth or size. It's about who's innovative and thinking ahead, but also combining it with the human touch. And so the concept there is that technology is wonderful up to a point, but that ultimately it's your ability to have a great team, great culture inside the company, and also work with people and meet them where they are in a very human way. And so we have a phenomenal internal culture that supports women, a lot of female advisors and people in our research team. We also have a tremendous financial focus for women practice group working in a lot of areas. So those were some of the reasons why we were nominated for that Future 50 award.
That's pretty impressive. Can I ask a question? Because you've done a book about women. You bring up how you're supportive of a lot of women, and I've been asked to do a lot of projects to help inspire women to be more successful. The dropout rate in the engineering field for women was excessively high at a couple of years ago, and I sit on one of the boards of advisors in one of the engineering departments at 2 universities. But just curious, do you see a huge difference in the way that women have to do business or have had to engage in doing business as opposed to the way men do? And, what this difference might be that might be able to pull. Is there a way that we can bridge it? Do we need to? Those kind of things.
Wow. So how much time do we have?
I know.
I was just going to say, Kim, that's a lot, and we're running out of time now. So maybe we'll have to revisit this on another question.
It's a big subject, and we do need to talk about it.
Yes, we do. We may have to do that on another show. So.
Well, I can do a Reader's Digest answer.
Give us a Reader's Digest, then we have to wrap up.
Yeah. So the answer is that we're seeing it across industries that the integration, having more women, there's 3 issues, right? In most hires, it's do they have the capacity, do they want the job, and do they get it? Do they get the job? And there's been disconnects for women in one or more of those areas, or at least the perception of men who are already in those companies, their ability to do one or more of those things. That is changing. Now, it's not changing as fast as I would like to see it change, because I do see the tremendous benefits of having a diverse, and diversity here is not just men and women, but diversity of thought. Another great book, by the way, for your entrepreneurs is a relatively new one called Loon Shots, Loon Shots. Phenomenal stories, and they talk about the fluids and the solids, the way that people think differently, the fixed mindset and growth mindset, and you have them in every organization, and they have to be able to work together. So women, interestingly enough, generally have better emotional intelligence, which has been a high predictor of great performance in a company, and they can navigate the fluids and solids better than men. So the base is built there for a phenomenal future, but we still have a lot of room to grow. My industry is one of the worst. I mean, my industry, there's a lot of good old boy culture. It's a little bit more on the wirehouse side, not the fee-only fiduciary side where I am. But young women in colleges are now being encouraged by the Financial Planning Association and others to think about financial planning as a career. And many of those young women say, oh, it's just a bunch of, fat white guys in New York smoking cigars, sitting around pulling the strings, and they're corrupt. And so again, some of that could be a little bit true, but the fact is there's a whole nother industry that has grown up around these independent wealth management firms with beautiful career paths for them.
So, it's funny because the engineering field, I've always believed it to be a lot more overpowering by men than women. My sister works in the financial industry, and she came to a conference with me, and ironically, 10,000 people, 98% of the attendees and the booths were men. And if you walked up to a booth as a woman and you started talking, they one probably wouldn't approach you because they wouldn't think that you had any business being there. But because of my background and my engineering skills and some of the things that I have implemented in our industry, you know, I had no problems engaging in a conversation and drawing them in. But she was shocked. She always thought the financial industry was overwhelmed with men in power. But as she told me, I had no idea. So maybe this is a problem in many industries. And and I always say it's not a glass ceiling, it's a stainless steel ceiling with steel bar. It's, you know, rebarb.
It's an iron curtain, but we just don't talk about it.
It's not something that has opened easy, and I'm very honored to hear you speak of doing things for the women. I think it should have never been necessary, but unfortunately, doing things for people to help empower them is necessary. And thank you for doing that.
Yes, and unfortunately, we also have to
We all
go. But we
are
do
out of
want to
time.
thank Dennis Stearns from the Stearns Financial Group, one of the
So Dennis,
top.
put your book up. Put your
Yeah,
book
put
up
your
so
book
we
up.
can
One of
see
the
it.
top financial planners in the United States, for sharing us some thoughts, and for the entrepreneurs, you have to really go look at his book. Okay, the CO Road Rules
Oh
and
no,
fourth
the
quarter
fourth quarter
fumbles.
fumbles is the one I
Fourth quarter
want.
fumbles are for everybody else that's on. But we want to thank you for watching Money Masters and hope to see you next time on
I'll
our
see you
show.
next time.
See you next
Yeah,
Have
time.
a
thank you
great
both.
time. Thank you, Dennis.